Hi,
Hi,
everybody.
everybody.
Welcome to
Welcome
our
to our
webinar, The
webinar, The
Process of
Process of
Coping
Coping
After
After
Abuse, a
a
Survivor's
Survivor's
Perspective,
Perspective,
presented by
presented by
William
William
Patterson's
Patterson's
student,
student,
Lisa
Lisa
Kennedy.
Kennedy.
This is
This
the
is the
first
first
webinar
webinar
that we are
that we're
doing
doing
here,
here,
presented by
presented
our
by our
student. So
student.
she's
So
our
she's our
first
first
student.
student.
Before I
Before I
begin
begin
today's
today's
webinar, I want
webinar,
to
I
go
want
over
to go
how
over
it
how
will
it
work
will work
for those
for
of you
those
who
of you
haven't
who haven't
attended
attended
before.
before.
First, you'll be
First, you'll
able
be
to
able
view
to
the
view the
presentation on your
presentation on your
computer
computer
screen.
screen.
You will
You will
also be
also
able
be
to
able
hear
to
the
hear the
presentation through
presentation
your
through your
computer's
computer's
audio
audio
system.
system.
Please feel
Please feel
free to
free
ask
to ask
questions by
questions by
typing them
typing
in.
them in.
We will
We will
monitor the
monitor the
questions
questions
and
and
answer them
answer
at the
them at
end
the
of the
end of the
webinar.
webinar.
Any
Any
questions not
questions not
answered in
answered in
today's
today's
webinar will
webinar
be
will be
addressed
addressed
after the
after the
webinar
webinar
is
is
completed.
completed.
And
And
now I
now
would
I
like
would
to
like to
introduce
introduce
today's
today's
topic
topic and
speaker.
speaker.
This
This
webinar is
webinar is
being
being
presented by
presented by
author,
author,
motivational
motivational
speaker,
speaker,
mom,
mom,
survivor,
survivor,
WP
WP
student,
student,
Lisa.
Lisa.
From the
From the
time she
time
was
she was
8 years
8 years
old,
old,
Aziza was
Aziza was
molested by
molested
her
by her
biological
biological
father,
father,
award-winning
award-winning
video
video
director
director
Aswad.
Aswad.
After
After
lending her
lending her
voice to
voice
a
to
news
a news
article from
article from
NewJersey.com,
NewJersey.com,
Aziza's
Aziz's
story
story
caught the
caught the
attention of
attention of
renowned
renowned
journalist and
journalist and
television
television
personality
personality
Katie
Katie
Couric,
Couric,
who
who
featured her
featured
on
her
her
on her
daytime
daytime
talk show
talk show.
Katie. Through this
Through this
platform,
platform,
Aziza
Aziza
further
further
encourages
encouraged
survivors
survivors
that
that
life
life
after
after
abuse can
abuse
be
is
positive,
positive,
fulfilling,
fulfilling,
and full of
full of
success.
success.
Aziza was
Aziza
the
was the
host of
host
her
of
own
her own
radio
radio
talk
talk
show,
show,
Katie
Katie
Aziza,
Visa,
on
on
91.7
91.7
FM
FM
Gems
Gems
Radio.
Radio.
And she
And
is the
she is the
founder of
founder of
Precious
Precious
Little
Little
Lady,
Lady,
a
a
social
social
progression
progression
organization
organization
that
that
seeks to
seeks to
combat
combat
child
child
molestation and
molestation and
abuse
abuse
by
by
strengthening the
strengthening the
bond
bond
between
between
mother and
mother and
daughter.
daughter.
Through her
Through her
motto,
motto,
if I
if
can
I
do
can
it,
do it,
you can
you
do
can
it
do it
too.
too.
Aziza
Aziza
Kadibi uses
uses
herself as
herself
a
as a
living
living
example that
example
we
that we
all
all
possess the
possess the
strength
strength
to not
to not
only
only
survive
survive
anything,
anything,
but to
but to
triumph
triumph
over
over
everything.
everything.
In
In
today's
today's
webinar,
webinar,
you will
you will
learn that
learn that
surviving
surviving
abuse is
abuse
an
is an
ongoing
ongoing
process.
process.
Whether you
Whether you
are a
are a
survivor
survivor
or a
or a
professional in
professional
the
in
field
the
of
field of
counseling,
counseling,
psychology, or
psychology, or
women's
women's
issues,
issues,
this
this
webinar will
webinar
help
will
you to
help you to
understand
understand
how to
how to
manage
manage
the
the
after
after
effects of
effects of
abuse.
abuse.
And
And
now I would
now I
like
would
to
like to
introduce our
introduce our
presenter,
presenter,
Aziza
Aziza
Kadibi.
Kadibi.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Sharon. I'm going to start today's webinar with a video. I was 8 years old. My father started molesting me. When I was 12 years old, he deemed me his sex slave. By the time I was 15, I got pregnant with my first child for him. Four of my children were fathered by my biological father, making my children also my brothers and sisters. My youngest child had two genetic disorders, spinal muscular atrophy and phenylketonuria. Spinal muscular atrophy made her completely disabled and eventually led to her demise in 2010. This experience alone impacted me in ways that no parent should ever have to go through. That combined with the fact that she was a result from rape, incest, and abuse almost put me into a state of depression. In my heart of hearts, and in my soul, and in my mind, I know that sharing my story is the right thing to do because it is helping others who are suffering. I give my audience the freedom to ask me any question that they want to. No question is too small, no question is too big, too serious, or too emotional. Anything that they want to know, they can ask me about. And offering complete openness about these issues is the best way to figure out how to stop them. So, why did this happen to me? That is a question that I believe can never be answered. And I think a lot of survivors ask this question, which then adds to their suffering. For me, I continue to ask this question, even though I really know that I shouldn't. But I think that my exploration into answering this question has basically brought me to where I am today. The facts are 1 in 4 girls are molested by the time they are 18. And accepting that fact, it has helped me to basically cope with not having the question of why did this happen to be answered. According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, the home is the most dangerous place for a woman. And that being made aware to us and to me, I have basically taken the perspective that I want to do as much as possible in helping what happened to me not happening to others. Click. The fact of the matter is, abuse is about the abuser and not the victim. Abusers, like in my case with my father, he took advantage of me because of his sexual desires, because of the power that he tried to maintain over me and my whole family. And I realized that as far as it being my fault, what happened to me, that it just isn't my fault. It really had nothing to do with me. It was about my father and him getting what it is that he wanted to satisfy his own ego and desires. Again, I stress to everybody that I speak to about my own feelings, and for anybody that is suffering as a victim and as a survivor, that is not your fault. This is one thing that I believe is the hardest thing to get survivors to understand. And honestly, as far as the abuser is concerned, in my case, my father used the fact that I am responsible for what he did to me in order to control me. And that's what kind of enables the feelings of guilt and shame and fear. Again, in speaking to different women, since I have been speaking publicly about what happened to me and speaking to different women, a major question is that it is because there is something about me, something about them that drew the attention of the abuser. This is simply not true. And I tell everybody that I speak to that as much as it feels like that it's your fault, well, this happened to you, so therefore, in some way, the universe must have wanted it to happen to you, that it really is not your fault. And I believe that it's that responsibility that survivors take on that prevents them or inhibits their continued healing. Guilt, again, is one of the things that as a survivor I felt. I didn't escape my father until I was 23 years old. And even with trying to move past what happened to me, trying to establish a life for me and my children, I suffered from the guilt of um, people thinking that I enjoyed what happened to me because I was so old in by the time I finally escaped him. And to a certain degree, a lot of what my father told me was to make me feel guilty about the things that he was doing to me. And I feel that a lot of abusers also take this as a form of control. Shame. Shame goes right hand in hand with guilt. And being that I was sexually abused, and those who have suffered sexual abuse, there is that shame of, well, because it's sex and there's something that you should enjoy, something that you're supposed to enjoy, if there is a sign of pleasure during the abuse, then of course you feel ashamed. In my case, my father really enforced this virginal type attitude. He would slut shame me and my mother and my other sisters and make us feel dirty, particularly make me feel dirty. So he would tell me that if I was to
leave him and go and be with another man or eventually grow up and get married, then that man wouldn't want me because I'm not a virgin anymore, a virgin anymore. And I believe that society kind of feeds into that idea, which puts the pressure on the victim. Fear is obviously a tool that is used in the abuse. I was afraid that what would happen to my sisters, because my father always told me that if I did not participate in the things that he wanted me to, then he would turn his attention to my sisters. And I took the role of protector, so to speak, and being afraid of having them suffer, I took on a lot of responsibility. When I started having children, when I was 15 years old, I got pregnant with my first daughter. um, then there came in the idea of him hurting my children. And he would actually threaten me and tell me that he would either kill my baby, he would throw my mother off the edge of a cliff. And all of this was to instill fear. If I was to ever tell somebody to run away or to do anything against what he was doing to me, then there would be consequences. Nightmares. Now, I feel that nightmares and speaking with other survivors are a response to the trauma that comes from either rape or abuse or molestation. And I did have nightmares in the beginning. Once I got away from my father, he was still out and about and living his life. So I was always looking over my shoulder. And the nightmares that I had was memories reenacting themselves. One, fear of him finding me again and harming my children. Two, and I had to figure out ways to get over those nightmares, not allow them to rule my life. Insecurity. Insecurity came in during my experience with socializing myself. I was working, I was out in the world, I was taking care of my children, and I felt like what happened to me, the abuse that I suffered would was like written across my forehead. I was afraid that people would know that I was abused, or that by the way that I looked or the way that I walked or the way that I talked, that it would bring attention to the things that happened with me, and that tied right into the shame and right into the guilt. So that was another thing that I had to work on, that I had to get over. The doubt in myself, I mean, that stemmed from when I was a child. My parent, someone that was supposed to be protecting me and was teaching me everything that I knew, will put the doubt in my mind that basically the world in general was dangerous. I mean, not only did my father raise me and my siblings with this idea that people outside of our family were evil, that the government was evil, now that I had gotten away from him, I was not secure with myself, and I doubted myself in the decisions that I could make. So that was another thing that I had to deal with. And I believe that a lot of survivors and victims struggle with this as well. So, as we segue into the part of the presentation that goes into how I um, dealt with and grew past all of these issues mentioned in the last slide, here is another video during a reading of my book, Unashamed of Life Tainted.
To me, like, you already know every time I see you, I already tell her that all the time, because it takes courage to even explain what took place with you, but it also takes more courage to also stand up and be strong, not to allow yourself to become emotionally deranged because of it. A lot of women go through this particular situation, they end up losing their mind, they end up going, what people call crazy. So for me personally, it's like you're very courageous. And I think with the brother, when you was asking the question for her, for me personally, being an educator as well as studying psychology, it's therapeutic for you to express what you're expressing, because if you internalize trauma, it's a known fact from a medical perspective that it could affect your organs. It could affect your heart, your liver, your kidneys, all the other organs. So for me personally,
So that was Dr. Jaja Shakur. He works at Essex County College in the Africana American Institute. And to, like he mentioned, the damage. According to the Child Molestation Research and Prevention Institute, childhood sexual abuse is a public health issue because it can result in various physical and psychological issues. For myself, some of the things that I have had problems with is asthma. I grew up asthmatic. My family did not believe in Western medicine. My father basically treated any ailments in the household, and I would have bouts of sickness where I was in bed for weeks at a time because I could not breathe. Um, and one of the things that he did do was he would have interactions with me as a way to quote unquote cure my asthma, which of course never worked. Sexual problems. This is classic to as a result of child molestation. Again, tying into the insecurities and the guilt and the shame. It is a challenge to then be able to enjoy sex in a positive way because it's so closely associated with pain and suffering. Dissociative identity disorder, multiple personality disorder. I did not to self-diagnose, not to self-diagnose, but I understand this result because as a way to cope with what was happening to me, I would apply it to a separate little girl that it was happening to. You know, I was my ideal self during the day, and then at night when my father would molest me, I was somebody else. Depression and low self-esteem. I guess, again, when I was a young adult, I had low self-esteem. I did not think that I was attractive. I did not think that anybody liked me. These were all beliefs that my father had instilled in me. Suicide is closely associated with the trauma of sexual abuse and molestation. Cutting. I've actually met two survivors who, in order to deal with the pain of being taken advantage of at a young age, do cut themselves because they feel that the pain of the physical pain drowns out the emotional pain. Abusing others. This is also, I myself don't understand how one that has suffered something negative can then inflict that onto another person, but it is a result of abuse. And anxiety and paranoia, the fear that I've experienced this personally, the fear that everybody is only looking at me in a sexual way, that all men that I come across only want to have sex with me because what the belief system that my father instilled in me was that that's all I was good for. So my worth to society was for sex. The first step to healing. One, acknowledgement. Acknowledgement is important for survivors because when you deny what has happened to you, it allows the experience and it allows the negative results to fester and to go untreated. Acceptance. I believe that this step is very important because you have, well, I'm going to speak from my point of view as much as possible. Being that I was abused for so long, it has impacted my life not only in myself, but I have children as a result. And if I didn't accept what happened to me, then I would be constantly fighting against it. And I have spoken to women who have aborted their children that was a result of incest or rape, that have given their children up for adoption. And not saying that they didn't accept it, but in order to make a clear decision on how to move forward, you have to accept that this thing happened to you. Education. I believe that in reading, once I escaped my father, I read, I spent hours in the library looking for other people that might have been through, or information on other people that might have been through the same things that I have been through. And in that journey, in that search, I have learned so much. And I believe that anyone who has suffered any kind of drama, I mean, drama, trauma or discomfort, if you educate yourself on something that you're not sure of, it just helps to build a confidence in how the next thing, had the next step on handling it. And that's what leads to empowerment. Once you are educated, you acknowledge first what has happened to you accept what has happened to you, and you educate yourself on how to move forward, and the culmination of those leads to empowerment. Coping. Ultimately, as a survivor, you can't change the past. So the best thing that we can do is to learn ways to cope with the issues that the trauma has caused. Um, I won't read out the definition of coping. It's there, but I do believe in understanding fully words in order to apply what you have learned to the action. So on a day-to-day basis, I have learned to cope to the best of my ability with what has happened to me. There are still drawbacks, there are still challenges that I go through, but because I know that they are there, and I understand the effects of what has happened to me, how it affects my life, then I can better look for solutions to cope with them better. Healing. Physical wounds take time to heal. In addition, they need to be nursed and protected against further damage. When the human body is wounded, our immune system goes into overdrive to encourage healing. For the damage caused by emotional and mental abuse, we have to apply the same techniques that our body uses. One of the major things is time. Do not rush yourself. I know I didn't. In the beginning, I did. I felt like I had this problem. These things were affecting my life. What happened to me affected my life. I needed to hurry up and get over it. I needed to hurry up and get over the negative effects so that I could live a normal life. And it made me frustrated. It put me in not a state of depression, but I was extremely stressed when I first got away from my father, because I felt like, well, can I just get to normal as soon as possible? And honestly, we don't even know what normal is exactly. So as a survivor, I encourage anyone that has shared with me their experience to give yourself the time. We are human. Everything is not going to work out perfectly. Be patient with yourself. Of course, that's back with the time. And employ different techniques. And I believe that this, just like if you was to get a cut or you was to have a major physical injury, you go through different things in order to heal it. I mean, for a simple scratch, you clean it with alcohol if you can stand the sting. You put on your antibiotic ointment, you get a band-aid, and then you nurse it until it's back healed. The same thing with emotional and mental healing. The same steps should be taken. Not one thing, only one thing doesn't work. And I think expecting that one solution is the solution can also be frustrating. So, I employ everything. Meditation. Meditation helps with my focus. It also, going back to the nightmares that being traumatized by any form of abuse could cause, it helps to just train your mind in controlling your thoughts. One of the things that I did learn to do is in my dreams, and I'm sure a lot of psychologists would have just a heyday exploring this, but I would have nightmares of memories of my father molesting me. And through every nightmare, through every repetitive nightmare, using meditation, I eventually started to kill him in my dreams. I know that sounds kind of strange, but I did. And honestly, it helped it continued to help empower me. You know, I know my logic tells me that what has happened to me in the past is not happening to me in the present, but my mind goes back and takes what happens to the past and brings them to the present, which affects me directly. And I understand that I have the power that to change that. So if I have a nightmare and wake up in, afraid or thinking that my father's laying right next to me, I know that through my dreams, I could also take my power back. Exercise. Everybody says exercise, 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 but I swear them endorphins through exercise really just helps with the ability to manage and to cope. Therapy is another good. I think that it's a form of communicating how you feel and getting outside input and direction. Communication. Now, not everybody understands what survivors go through, what victims go through. Communicating with your loved ones, I feel has been very therapeutic for me. For example, I'm divorced now, but when I first escaped my father, a couple of years after I escaped my father, I did find a man, fall in love, got married. But I created this whole fake story about who the father of my other children were, thinking that he wouldn't understand me. He would think that, I was a slut, that I wanted what my father did to me, all of the fears that I had collected and that my father instilled in me. So I created this crazy story about some men that my parents gave me to, assigned me to, arrange that I had children with. And when I finally got the strength or accessed the strength to tell him the truth, my husband, ex-husband now, my husband was very hurt. And that's when I learned that if someone really loves you, then you can communicate with them the things that have hurt you in your past. And if they're a really good person, hopefully they are, if they love you and you love them, then they'll be more understanding, because me lying in the first place did not help the situation. Writing. Ooh, can I go back? How do I just press the back button? Okay. Sorry about that. Writing, I think, is another form of communication. I started writing my book, Unashamed of Life Tainted, when my daughter was in the hospital. She was very ill. And I was doing it as a form of therapy, pouring my feelings and my thoughts out onto a piece of paper. When I started going to school when I was at 35 years old, I shared a speech, a public speaking piece. And when I shared what happened to me, there was a student that came up to me afterwards, and she had told me that her father used to molest her, and she had never told anyone before telling me. So I think that writing kind of creates an energy that helps you to pour out anything that you're going through. And I recommend it to anybody going through anything, really. If you had an argument with your man or your woman, then, when you write it down, it tends to get thoughts laid out in a more organized manner, and you can analyze it. Creative visualization. This goes right hand in hand with meditation. I believe that whatever we think and focus on, we can bring to reality. And I visualize myself on a regular basis achieving my goals, being at peace, being my ideal self. Also, helping others definitely is an assistance to my healing, and I believe that it helps a lot of other people heal as well. Just knowing that you are more. For me, being that my father raised me believing that my only purpose in life was for his sexual pleasure, helping others helps to show myself and establish that no, that is not the only thing that I'm worth. I'm worth so much more, and I can have a positive effect on other people. And again, education, read, read, read. I will say read all the time. Reiterating, take time, be patient with yourself. And healing is a continuous process. I have had times where I have backslid. My partner now, we get into an argument and he may do something that reminds me of my dad, and well, I don't really lose it, but it puts me in a not so good place. And I understand that. And I express to him that my healing is continuous. I can't put an end date and a time or expiration date on when it can be done. And I think anyone that has experienced any kind of hardship or challenges, I don't care how large or how small, if it has affected you in a negative way, the healing process does take time, and we should understand that. So these are just some suggestions of some of the books that I swear by, particularly dealing with meditation, creative visualization, using the power of your imagination to create what you want in life, and ancient teachings for beginners. Now, ancient teaching for beginners is interesting because it takes a lot of spiritual, esoteric stuff and makes it scientific. I mean, it kind of cross relates just how chanting helps with the vibrations in your body and helps to correct certain things and get your mind focused. So I recommend going and checking those out. Love, sex, and relationships. Now, as I said before, I was married. My first boyfriend after escaping my father he was a mature man, and I think that I was just finding myself, and I had the kind of residuals of what I thought a man should be through the example that my father gave me. But my husband, we met, and I was able to open up with him once I finally did about how my trauma has affected my sex life. um, there was some, I'm not going to say sexual identity, but I was exposed to having sex with a woman at a very, very early age. I was 10 years old, and I was not sure. I didn't even know if it was accepted, or I assumed that it was normal, I guess. Again, what is normal exactly? But um, those were things that I had to explore within myself as I became an adult and understood the world more. Trust is a big issue with me. If I can't trust you, my father violated my trust in him. So I think for a lot of survivors, trust is a major challenge. Triggers. Again, like I mentioned, with my partner or anybody that I deal with, if they remind me of something that my father used to do, it does have an effect on me. But because I have an awareness and I know that that is something that will take some time to get over, then I'm able to easier control my reaction. And again, your self-worth. You have to love yourself no matter what has happened to you. And I know no matter what has happened to me, I am the most important thing. Well, besides my children, but I'm the most important thing that is, I have to take care of myself, and I am very valuable to my family and my friends and the world. And that is just an affirmation, again, through meditation, through creative visualization, that I just employ and use. Ultimately, I have had to reprogram myself from the programming that my father put in. which leads me to my organization, Precious Little Ladies. Going over everything that I have spoken on so far, I learned that obviously I'm not the only one. And when you are suffering, when you are being abused, you feel like you are the only one. There is so much focus between you and the abuser, and it's very lonely, and it contributes to the fear and the self-doubt and the insurity. So I have taken the idea of helping people to start an organization that will combat child molestation and domestic violence by strengthening the bond between mothers and daughters. And I think that that's important because me and my mother were not close. My mom was in love with my father and ultimately did anything that he said. So I've chosen to take the perspective of teaching women how to communicate and be close with their children. So then if anything was to happen, or their little girl or little boy felt uncomfortable about another adult, then they are open to going and speaking to their moms about it. At the same time, the mother has the tools to help them. So what we do we are a nonprofit organization that looks to provide services for families to prevent child abuse, child molestation, and domestic violence. While strengthening the foundation of the family through workshops and support, we serve as a resource and advocate for children, parents, and families. So essentially, we are a referral service, but some of the services we do provide are survivor support groups, which I conducted one last week at the East Orange Public Library, and I'm looking to grow to have these support groups where it uses like the helper therapy theory, where you get a group of people that are dealing with some of the same issues, and through their communication and camaraderie, then you find solutions. At the same time, those that are involved benefit from feeling important and being able to help others, at the same time getting help for themselves. We also are working on an empowerment workshop fair where we have a day in the summer and we provide 3 workshops, self-defense, one, and sexual abuse awareness, and another one maybe like etiquette, something a little more on the mild side. And we invite families to come out, and for the completion of 3 workshops, they get a gift card to the movies or to go out to dinner, to get their hair and nails done, to contribute to promoting to continued bonding. Girl, we've got you covered. It's a program that we have where we collect health and beauty products to give to women living in domestic violence shelters. So I've partnered with 2 shelters so far. One is Access Family Services in Essex County, and the other one is the Center of Hope and Safety, the Center for Hope and Safety in Passaic County. And we collect these items throughout the year. We do a good push drive during the month of October, which is DV Awareness Month. And we create these packages of lotion, soaps, combs, brushes, makeup to give to women living in survivor shelters. This is the most important thing. As a resource network, I am partnering with as many organizations as possible that provide services that my clients could use. When I first escaped my father, I felt like it was the most difficult thing to actually find the help that I needed. I mean, even with taking care of my children, the welfare department didn't even know how to get me on the path to getting any kind of child support because they had never dealt with a case like mine. So we, Precious Little Ladies, serves it's important for us to build relationships. So we are building relationships with other organizations that maybe only focus on DV or maybe only focus on child advocacy, so that if a client comes to us, then we can help them find the resources that we need. At the same time, it works the other way around, because then, like in my area, there are no survivor support groups. Between all the organizations in Essex County, they don't have a sexual abuse survivor support group. So then now that through our relationship, my relationship with the organization that doesn't have it, then they can refer someone that needs it to me. Family advocacy, we are building on that, again, through relationships, through with other organizations. But because our goal is to strengthen the bond between mothers and daughters, we are focusing on being a support system for the families. Now, to work on the, ooh, that was loud. Okay, yep, go back. Women's History Month. For Women's History Month, we are giving our New Dawn, New Day bruncheon and day party, where we are raising money for this family empowerment event in the summer. It is happening on March 4th in East Orange, because that is where we are based, at Bogey's Lounge. The donation we're asking for is $32, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun because sexual abuse is a taboo topic, and people are not very comfortable in talking about it. I have figured out a way, I hope I figured out the way, to incorporate it into events where it's not so jarring to hear about. So, for instance, at this event, I will be giving a speech, I'll be speaking, raising awareness, but I want to encourage and celebrate even the life that I have now. I lived a life of suffering for so long, and I am just so grateful and so thankful to not be there anymore, and being able to make my own decisions and lead my own life and take care of my children. And if things go wrong, it's my fault. When things go right, it's, kudos to me. And it represents a new dawn and a new day. And I feel like survivors and the women that I have spoken to, once you achieve a certain level of success and be able to get past a certain level of suffering, it's like a new dawn, and it is a new day. So we will be having that in March. Stop the music again. Go to the next one. Okay, just one more video. So, any questions?
I just put my computer up. I hope you can hear me. It might be a little garbled because we have two computers going at the same time. But if you can hear me, if you have any questions, you can type them in now. Give a few seconds. But actually, I do have one question I wanted to ask. You were so poised and so confident, and I just wondered, you're so young, and I just wondered what you think was the main thing that got you there or helped you. if there's one thing you can point to.
If there's one thing I can point to, I would say my refusal to fail. Failure for me is not an option. And I feel like, and my trust and my certainty in God, I feel like that we have this ability. I mean, I think humans are amazing, and we have this ability, and ultimately we just have to learn how to access it. So I have this kind of just do it attitude, and that had to be developed, of course. And I think having children and knowing that they depended on me to provide for them, I just kept putting myself out there. I didn't use fear to limit me because I was aware that that is what my father used to control me and to control my family. So I'm like, you know what? Fear is ultimately just a feeling. Yes, it's meant to keep us alive. It helps to keep us alive. But when you talk about, things like even now, I was telling you how I was a little nervous, but the job still has to get done. And I know that that's just a feeling and it's not going to kill me. So I read and I study and I know what I want to do and I know my focus and I just take whatever steps are necessary in order to achieve it. So, yeah. Thank you for that question.
Well, it was something that was on my mind. But if anybody has any other questions, if you have questions that you don't want to write or that maybe you want to ask Aziza individually, do you have some contact information?
Yes. I will go to that slide now. So this is my contact information. My email address, aziza@preciouslittleladies. Actually, it's .org. I'm sorry about that. It's .org. So used to topping.com. Or azizakabibi.com. My contact information is on either of those websites, either azizakabibi.com or preciouslittleladies.com. My IG, Twitter, and Snapchat. I am social media like crazy. So is at Aziza Kabibi across everything. These are just some of the hashtags that I use. And I also, if you go to preciouslittleladies.org, we do have not a GoFundMe, it's called Razoo. And I chose Razoo because it in itself is a nonprofit organization. So the fees that they collect through any fundraising that we do actually go towards other causes. So it's Razoo. It's on our preciouslittleladies.org/donate page. And you can contribute if you'd like. That would be a blessing to our efforts. And yeah, email me, tweet me. It doesn't matter. I'm all about communication. So even if you don't have any questions right now and you think of something later, by all means, email me or tweet me or whatever. Yeah, reach out. Yeah, reach out anyway.
But thank everyone for coming. I hope you found this as enlightening and really, Aziza, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's quite a story, and where you are right now is amazing. So,
yeah.
And Aziza is actually a junior. Right?
Yes, I'm a junior here at William Patterson.
And she is our first student presenter for our webinar. So another first for you. You're doing great.
Thank you.
Okay, so if you have any questions, please, you can email her, look up the stuff, feel free to look at that event. We have all the information here in the Alumni House and also on her sites. So if you're interested in attending, spread the word. And any other questions, let us know.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you.
Thank you all for attending. And yeah.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you, everybody.